You ever have one of those nights where you're lying there staring at the ceiling and you say to yourself, God, I need a sign. Just give me something, anything. And then nothing happens. Total silence, not even a whisper. You start thinking, what's going on? Did he forget about me? Did I do something wrong? That night I felt something I don't often feel. Small. Lost. I was in a place where I'd done everything right, or at least I thought I had. I'd worked hard, fought battles, trusted people, built things, and still I was surrounded by confusion. So I asked for a sign, a clear one, a big one, the kind that makes you know God is listening. And when I didn't get it, I'll be honest with you, I was angry, I was disappointed. But that silence turned out to be the loudest message I ever received, because sometimes the answer isn't in the thunder or the lightning. Sometimes the answer is in the quiet, the stillness, the wait. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what I learned in that silence. I'm going to tell you what that night really meant, and why sometimes when God doesn't speak, He's saying more than we could ever imagine. You'll want to stay till the end, because that silence changed everything. That night, when I sat there waiting for a sign, I thought silence meant something was wrong. I thought maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I had messed up. Maybe God was just done with me. You ever feel that way, like you're calling out and nobody's picking up? I was looking for fireworks, for a miracle, for some huge, dramatic answer that would tell me exactly what to do. But what I didn't understand at that time was that silence itself is a test. A big one. Because anybody can believe when things are loud, when the signs are clear, when the doors open right away. But when everything goes quiet, that's when you really find out what kind of faith you have. You see, silence makes you question everything. It makes you doubt your choices, your direction, even your worth. You start replaying every mistake, every missed chance, wondering if this is payback or punishment. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's a test to see if you can hold on, even when you can't see the next step. That's when faith stops being a word and starts being a muscle. It gets tested, stretched, pushed. The silence is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to strip away the noise so you can finally hear what's real. When everything stopped moving, I had to sit with myself. No distractions, no applause, no guidance, just me in the quiet. And I realized maybe God wanted to see if I'd still believe when I didn't get what I asked for. Maybe He wanted to see if I'd stay faithful without the sign, without the proof, without the answer on my timeline. The silence tested my patience, my pride, my control. It forced me to surrender what I thought I knew and lean on something deeper. That's what the silence does. It reveals your heart. It's not rejection, it's revelation. When God stays quiet, He's not ignoring you. He's teaching you to listen in a different way. The silence is the sign. It's the moment between the question and the breakthrough, the pause that builds your strength, the quiet that prepares you for what comes next. I'll be honest. The hardest part of that silence wasn't the waiting, it was the fight inside me. My ego hated it. My ego wanted answers, control, movement, proof. I wanted to feel powerful, to know I could handle everything, to believe I was the one directing the show. But that night, when heaven stayed quiet, I realized something uncomfortable. Sometimes the biggest obstacle to hearing from God is our own voice. We're too busy trying to lead, too proud to listen, too confident to admit we're lost. I kept thinking, why isn't He answering me? When the truth was, I wasn't ready to hear anything except what I wanted to hear. The ego doesn't like silence because silence exposes it. It shows you how fragile your certainty really is. It takes away your spotlight, your sense of control, your ability to fix things instantly. I was used to fighting my way through life, pushing, building, talking, convincing. I wasn't used to being still. I wasn't used to being humbled. And that's exactly what the silence did. It humbled me. It showed me that not every unanswered prayer is a failure. Some are lessons in disguise. Some are reminders that we are not in charge. In that quiet space, I began to see how much of my frustration wasn't about faith. It was about pride. I wanted God to move on my schedule, to prove He was on my side, to give me validation. But maybe He was waiting for me to let go of the need to be right, to be seen, to be in control. Maybe the silence was God's way of saying, it's not about your plan, it's about mine. The ego doesn't like surrender, but that's where the real transformation begins. When you stop trying to be the one who figures everything out, when you stop demanding signs that flatter your pride and start asking for truth that changes your heart, something shifts. You begin to realize that the silence isn't an insult, it's an invitation. It's the space where your ego loses power and your soul begins to listen. When the silence dragged on, I started to notice something I hadn't seen before. Small things, quiet things, things I had always overlooked because I was too focused on the big sign I thought I needed. I began to realize that maybe the answer wasn't missing at all. Maybe it was hidden in plain sight. We expect God to speak in thunder, but sometimes He speaks in a whisper. We expect lightning bolts, but sometimes it's just a breeze, a conversation, a moment of peace in the middle of chaos. The hidden answer is never loud. It's patient, waiting for us to slow down enough to recognize it. I had been searching for direction, begging for a clear sign, but I was ignoring the small confirmations that were already there. The right people showing up at the right time. The opportunities that didn't make sense but opened anyway. The obstacles that forced me to pause. Each one was part of the answer, but I couldn't see it because I was too busy demanding a dramatic revelation. The hidden answer lies in the timing, in the patterns that don't make sense until later. It's like putting together a puzzle. Piece by piece, it looks random. But step back and you start to see the picture forming. That's the thing about silence. It gives space for understanding to unfold. It forces you to look inward, to trust your gut, to notice the small nudges you usually brush aside. I learned that God doesn't always change your situation right away because sometimes the real answer is in changing your perspective. I wanted the sign to come from the sky, but it was coming from within me. It was in the lessons, the patience, the strength I didn't know I had until I was quiet enough to see it. The hidden answer was not a word, not a sound, but a realization that silence was not emptiness. It was direction disguised as stillness, wisdom wrapped in quiet moments, a message that could only be heard when the noise stopped and the heart finally started to listen. There comes a point when the silence becomes too heavy to ignore, when you're tired of waiting and you start to think maybe this is how it's always going to be. I reached that point. I remember sitting there, frustrated, asking myself what the silence was even for, but somewhere in that stillness, something shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. I started realizing that maybe unanswered prayers aren't failures. Maybe they're turning points. The moment you stop trying to get what you want and start asking why you wanted it in the first place. Maybe the silence was there to break my rhythm, to reroute my path before I rushed into something that wasn't meant for me. The more I reflected, the more I saw how the times I thought God had ignored me were the same times I was being redirected. That job that didn't work out, that door that closed, that person who walked away, every one of those silences was a step toward something better, even when it hurt. The waiting built something in me that instant answers never could. It taught me endurance. It taught me perspective. It taught me to separate what I wanted from what I needed. There's a kind of strength that comes only from holding on when you don't understand why you're holding on. I realize faith isn't proven by how loudly you can shout when you're blessed. It's proven by how quietly you can stand when you're not. The silence was shaping me, sanding off my impatience, stretching my belief beyond convenience. Every unanswered prayer became a seed planted in the dark, invisible for a while, but growing roots underneath. What I once saw as delay was actually development. What I thought was absence was alignment. The turning point wasn't when the silence ended, it was when I stopped fighting it. That's when I saw that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come wrapped in stillness, and what feels like the end is often just the middle of a much bigger plan unfolding quietly behind the scenes. After that night, I began to see silence differently. It wasn't a wall between me and God. It was a doorway I hadn't learned to walk through yet. For the first time, I stopped begging for signs and started trusting that maybe the silence was the sign. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The more I looked back, more I realized every quiet moment, every unanswered question was shaping me into someone who could handle the answers when they finally came. I used to think faith meant getting what you asked for. Now I know faith means believing even when you don't. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop fighting the quiet and start listening to it. I began to notice that the silence was actually full of presence. There was a calm strength in it, something grounding, something steady. I learned to sit with the unknown, to let go of the need to control every outcome. It's not easy. We all want certainty, clarity, assurance. But sometimes God's silence is His way of asking, do you trust me even now? It's not about the words you hear. It's about the trust you build when you hear nothing at all. The awakening came slowly. It wasn't a flash of light or a sudden revelation. It was a deep understanding that silence doesn't mean distance. It means growth. It means maturity. It means you've reached a level where you can walk by faith, not by sight. I stopped seeing silence as empty and started seeing it as sacred. Every pause, every delay, every unanswered moment carried meaning. It wasn't that God was gone. He was closer than ever, speaking through stillness, guiding through patience, molding through waiting. The silence became a teacher, and faith became not about what I could prove, but about what I could trust.